Hey folks, Marcus here from the Ashland Fly Shop. We're back at the Vise. Got summer steelhead in the river a little bit, some say. Haven't found much recently, but we're going to tie another muddler fly. This is, I've really just been fishing a lot of muddlers this season, and it's such a versatile platform to tie on. So I want to show some of the things that you can do with a muddler. So we're going to start with an Alec Jackson steelhead iron in a 5. If you really wanted this muddler or any muddler to fish right up on the surface, then going with like a 7.9, 8.9 or a Daiichi 2051 would be a little bit lighter wire hook, but I don't mind it riding below the surface a little bit. So I've got it debarbed and in the vise here, and I'm going to start right up near the eye. I've got Vise 50D gel spun in black, and I'll just come back here. And I'm going to leave a little gap between where I stop my thread and the point, because I'm going to do a little bright orange tag, and that's going to be this glow bright in the fluorescent orange color. And I like to leave that room. You'll see why I like to leave that room. Because I like to tie this floss off. And I don't like to, this point is actually where I'm going to tie it off again. And I like to wrap back behind my thread so that I'm just wrapping with the floss on the hook instead of on top of the thread. I just think that's a cleaner way to get your floss wraps instead of wrapping on top of thread. And I might do one more pass just to make it a little more vibrant. Just keeping those wraps nice and consistent. And then come right back to where our thread ended and tie it off. And that's how I like to do my floss. Sometimes I'll even do a clear coat of UV on top of it just to kind of trap it in there. Sometimes when you get fish eating floss or tinsel at the back of a fly, their teeth will really rip it up. But today I'm just going to leave it how it is. And then for the body, I'm going to use speckled copper Flashabou, which I think now has become my favorite color of Flashabou. And I'll just tie, I've got 4 strands there. I'm just going to tie them in right there and trap them in my material clip. And then I just have some fine wire. I have Danville, but using an ultra thread would be just fine. I've got gold here today. Copper, silver would be just fine. I'll just tie it in. And then as I'm wrapping, as you can see, I'll just do nice consistent thread wraps and trap both the wire and the Flashabou on my way up the shank. Squeaky bottom. And I'll just come right to where the eye of the hook returns. I'll pick up the Flashabou and trap the wire. And I'll just try and do nice, consistent wraps up the shank. If you have a rotary vise, it's nice to rotate and look all the way around the hook. Because it's speckled, you could skip a spot and leave some of that black thread showing through, and it wouldn't be the biggest deal in the world because you have these little speckles of black in the Flashabou. So just come right to there and tie that off. I'm actually going to keep this Flashabou for later. We have the Flashabou tied off, and then I'll just come, and I just come in the same direction. that I wrapped the Flashaboo. I just like the look of that. And I'll do these wraps, quite a few of them in here, just evenly spaced. And the one reason I like to do a fair amount of them is just that Flashaboo is pretty sensitive. So the more wire wraps you have in there, the more durable it's going to be. So I'll start a dubbing loop here. Forward a little bit. For the dubbing ball, I'm just going to use Ice Dub in the pheasant tail color. But you could use really any color you want in here. Get it in my loop. Give it a good spin. I'm just going to pick it out a little bit. Start wrapping right where I left off with that Flashaboo. Do one, maybe two wraps right on top of each other just to get that good sized ball shape in there. I'll tie it off. Then I'm going to use these strands of Flashaboo that I saved from the body. I'm going to tie them right on top. Actually, these got a little bent from wrapping in the body, so I'm just going to cut off some new Flashaboo. Doesn't take much here, I'll just cut off just two strands. I'm going to put two right on top, fold them back. I'm going to do the same on the bottom. It's a little more flash than I normally do, but the first time I tied this fly I used a polar chenille. And this is just doing the same thing, just with Flashaboo instead of the polar chenille. If you wanted, you could get full coverage all the way around. But it's totally preference how much flash goes in here. I'm going to do full coverage on this one. And that's just like pretty similar to using a polar chenille or something like that. A little more sparse, and because you don't have that cord that the chenille comes on, you just don't take up as much room around the eye, which I like. So on top of that flash, I've got a ring neck, the whole skin, and this one's in black. And I want to pick one of the larger ones, not all the way back at the very end, but one of the longer feathers in here. And unlike a lot of feathers where I'm not trying to use any fluff on this fly, I am going to save a little bit of this fluff. So I'll take the feather and gently pull everything back so it's splayed out like that. And I'll grab the tip and tie it in right on top of this Flashaboo. Just make sure it's tied down in there. Come around and grab this stem. Oh. I'll make sure that it's tied down in there. You can see I'm not leaving myself a ton of room at the head, and that's actually how I like it on this fly. This is gonna have a pretty dang small muddler head on the top of it. I got the idea from the muddled euphoria fly from Aquaflies, just having this really small sparse muddler head. I really like the look of it, and having that fluff at the top of this, I think just looks really cool. So I'll wrap back on this stem a little bit and clip it as short as I can. So even right there, I mean, you could just leave it if you didn't want a muddler. And I kind of think that a lot of my muddlers, they're kind of just cool looking traditionals with a muddler head on the top. So if you wanted to leave that, that's a pretty cool fly right there. But I'm going to do a moose body muddler head on the top. And I'm going to grab a pretty good chunk of moose body, clip it off, and I always do one kind of pass with my fingers, and then I come through, I split the hairs and come through with a comb and just grab all that under fur out of there. Then I'll put this hair in my stacker. Then I've got nice even tips. And like I said, this is not going to be a big muddler head, so I'm just going to take these tips and right at that transition point, I'm going to clip everything off. And how big you want the head, how big you want that, how much hair you want sticking out of there, you kind of determine based on how far forward you put those stems. So I've got it tied in there, and I'm just going to push everything back. And weave my thread through that hair, peel everything back. And come right in front of it. Sometimes it's hard to get, because I like my muddlers pushed up right against the eye, so it's hard to get that thread above all those hairs, so you gotta just wrap really slow and make sure you're not trapping any hairs there. I'll grab my whip finisher, and again, just make sure everything's more or less pulled back on each wrap. And I'm just going to do one whip finish on this fly. And that, you could just be done there if you didn't want to spend any extra time. I'm even going to make that head even shorter, smaller. So if you look at that mottled euphoria, that head is even smaller than this. But it's all personal preference. This fly, I'd fish on dry line. I'd also fish it on a light sink tip, Versaleader, on a Scandi line. So I'll pull it around here. Now I'm going to come in with my UV. Just make sure to get that glue all the way around the head. It does not take much of this glue. And if you cover the eye, I always just put my bobbin back through the eye, make sure it's nice and clear, and then zap it. So that's a pretty dang simple little muddler fly. And I like the kind of copper, the mixture of copper and black, and then the dark moose body head. It's just a cool little fly to fish. So give it a whirl on your local waters. Thank you very much for tuning in.